Check.
People were creating all sorts of ruckus with Apple saying we want you in 3 days a week. So convenient. They want their internet company.
Seconds? Huh? You said? Clear. 20 seconds? 15 seconds.
All right, ready?
Yep.
Welcome to the Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 Walnut Creek Design Review Commission meeting. Design Review Commission meetings have reopened to the public in person effective October 21. Commissioners will be participating from the council chambers. Members of the public are invited to attend and participate at the locations identified on the agenda. As a courtesy and technology permitting, members of the public may continue to provide live remote oral public comment via the city's Zoom video conferencing platform. However, the city cannot guarantee that the public's access to teleconferencing technology will be uninterrupted, and technical difficulties may occur from time to time. Members of the public desiring to provide comments as part of the meeting are encouraged to either submit written comments at least 2 hours prior to the meeting or to attend the meeting in person. For those wishing to join on Zoom, the Zoom meeting ID is 886-6467-6092. The password is 060688. And if you don't have a computer, you can call in at 1-669-900-6833. All right, well, welcome everybody. Will the secretary please take a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Valia.
Here.
Commissioner Newsom.
Here.
Chair Krelling.
Here.
Commissioner Case and Vice Chair Killian both phoned in their absence for the night. They will not be here. We have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Consent calendar. Do we have anything on consent, Mr. Secretary?
We do not, but staff does have a recommendation of the commission, and that would be to move item 5A after item 3, and then move item 4A, 4, public hearings, to after 5. We would need a motion and a second on that.
Does anybody wish to make a motion?
I so motion.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion made and seconded essentially to bring forward the city manager's presentation prior to the public hearing. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Can we take a vote, please?
We can. Chair Carling,
Yes.
Commissioner Newsom,
Yes.
Commissioner Villa.
Yes.
Okay, we will then go do public communications 3 and then go to item 5.
Motion carries. All right, moving to public communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. So we'll start first. Is there anyone in chambers who wishes to address the Commission? There being none, Mr. Secretary, do we have anybody on Zoom who would like to speak to the Commission?
I see no hands. There's a couple of attendees. If any of the attendees wish to speak on that item, which is public communications, raise your hand, please. I'm seeing none.
All right, there being none, we'll close public communications. And per our prior motion and vote, we are going to move to item 5, Commission considerations. We will return to item 4 when we're done with this item. And this will be the city manager's update. The city manager will provide an update regarding the city's activities over the past 2 years, the city's current focus, and future priorities and considerations, which includes a discussion about a potential sales tax initiative. So the floor is yours.
Great.
And I never speak from this one. I think you control it. There we go. Coming up. All right. Well, good evening. Thank you. I'm Dan Buckshire, City Manager, and do appreciate your flexibility with the agenda. And hopefully the lighter attendance of the commission is not a reflection of who's here as your guest speaker this evening, but I'll try not, but who knows. But in any event, as hopefully all of you are aware, the City Council and I have been reaching out to the community to share with folks what's been occurring over the last couple years, the City Council's current focus, as well as what we're thinking about towards the future. And my intent tonight is to share this with all of you, given that you are representatives of the city, so that you can hear firsthand what others are hearing in the event you receive questions or inquiries, whatever the case may be. So I would like to run through this presentation and have some time for questions at the end. One thing I did want to note up front, and I believe all the commissioners will receive some training on this down the road, but certainly city employees, but city officials, city representatives, I am going to be talking about a potential tax measure, and us in our official capacity and our official duties cannot advocate one way or another for a measure. So I'm just here to share information. I welcome any questions or comments you may have, but just ask that you keep that in mind regarding that we cannot advocate any one way or another. So with that, let me jump in here. So as I mentioned, I'm going to touch on the past couple of years, where we're at today, and what is on the horizon. So a quick update, most of you are likely very familiar with this, but Walnut Creek, we did surpass 70,000 residents here with the most recent census in 2020. We're at about 71,000. And as you're all aware, we do have these unincorporated pockets of within the community, little islands to some extent. So we have about 20 to 25,000 residents who have a Walnut Creek mailing address, but are technically not in the city limits. So we're actually closer to 90 to 95. And then during the daytime, our population can swell upwards of 200,000 folks, depending upon what's occurring, given that we're a job center and a regional hub for activity. So we're much larger than what 70,000 may indicate. And then what we often hear from folks is what they really appreciate about Walnut Creek is the high quality of life, that we are a regional destination for jobs, for entertainment, and that we have a lot of arts, recreation, and open space, and very well-maintained parks that are heavily used. And so it's one of the things that we like to think sets Walnut Creek apart from some other cities and why folks really like living here and visiting here. Similar to many other cities, we obviously provide the fundamentals in terms of police services, public safety, general preparedness and response, emergency management. We do not provide fire service. That's done by the county, but we do partner with them for prior fire prevention and preparedness, evacuation management, that sort of thing. Our roads overall are in pretty good shape. Actually, the official rating is good, not great. Not to say that there aren't some areas that need to be improved, but our streets are generally in good shape. And again, we have a large number of parks, a lot of open space, and we are a very artistic community, a heavy focus on the arts. The Leisure Center is owned and operated by the city. The Repertory Theater Company is owned and operated by the city. And obviously we have many, many other programs that we offer as well. So we touch base on the last couple of years as we've really been dealing with what have been 3 emergencies. The first being COVID, and we've literally been in a state of emergency since March 15th of 2020 when we issued that initial proclamation. It remains in effect today. And then we were also dealing with social justice, social unrest matters, primarily during the summer of 2020. And then there were significant economic and financial impacts both to the community and to the city that we've been dealing with. So it's been a long 2 years, as it has been for many folks. In terms of the pandemic, we were required, just like everybody else, to shut down many of our operations for quite some time. The only activities and facilities that were open to the public were those that were directly related to public safety. Our police officers were working in person, as were many of our public works employees to maintain our parks, our infrastructure, our roads. But everybody else was pretty much working at home, which meant that we had to transition how we provide those services because folks still needed to get building permits. They still needed to have plans reviewed. So we needed to figure out how to do all of that. I give our staff a tremendous amount of credit. I think overall we did a really good job. We're reflecting now to learn, to think about how things went, what we can learn from that experience and apply going forward to improve. But I think overall it worked pretty well. So we were effectively closed to the public for most of our operations from mid-March of 20 until June 15th of 2021. Since then, we've been operating in a hybrid environment where we have some folks in the office, some folks at home, and we're offering services again in person, but also remotely. And one of the things that's changed is the way that folks want to receive services from the city. By way of example, prior to COVID, we had about 50 visitors a day to City Hall. The significant majority were going to our development services counter for permits or plan review. We're now averaging about 15 visitors a day to City Hall. And it's not because the level of service or interest has dropped, it's just folks are receiving those services online. So we're rethinking, how do we best meet our customers' needs? What should we provide in person? What should we provide remotely and online, or what should we do both? And then probably the most visible change with respect to COVID. Now, I know why people are always adjusting this microphone when I'm sitting up here. It doesn't exactly sit real well there. So in any event, the most visible change was all the outdoor dining. We know restaurants were hit really hard during the pandemic. They couldn't serve folks indoors. Outdoor was the only lifeline. And we spent a significant amount of time. I know on the surface, it probably doesn't seem like a lot. What's the big deal? Putting some tables and chairs and tents outdoor. But there was a lot that went on behind the scenes to ensure that all health codes were met, safety requirements, a lot of fire code, and to ensure that there was some equity in terms of where they were placed so that one business wasn't negatively impacting other businesses. So that was on the COVID front. The summer of 2020 was, a really difficult time in America, and undoubtedly was for Walnut Creek after the murder of George Floyd. There was a lot of social activity, and we were at the center of much of that in the Bay Area. There was a large-scale looting event on May 31st of 2020, which we had hundreds of people descend upon Broadway Plaza. About 40 stores were broken into, millions of dollars, about $4.5 million of merchandise. There was a shooting. It was a big deal. And as you'll probably recall, a lot of stores downtown were boarded up. It was a really difficult time. The next day was the beginning of what was effectively about a 6-month period of protests. And that was our largest protest with about 5,000 to 7,000 protesters. And it was significant. For the most part, it was peaceful. There were some interactions with the police, but fortunately, No major injuries or anything worse than that, but it was a difficult time. There were a lot of folks that were feeling as if the city didn't do enough to respond to the looting event and did too much to respond to the protests. So we adjusted our approach over time, with the goal being to support First Amendment rights and folks' freedom to protest, but to do so in a safe manner for their safety and for residents, visitors, and certainly for property as well, to try to avoid any property damage. So that really, the protests, we had at least weekly protests. It was usually multiple times a week from beginning effectively June 1st of 2020 until about February of 2021. So a big focus in that area. We did listen and we did learn a lot during that time frame. In addition to the events of 2020, there was a very challenging and controversial officer-involved shooting that occurred here in Walnut Creek in June of 2019. As a result of a lot of feedback from the community on that event, as well as the summer of 2020's events, we made a lot of changes and really focused specifically on mental health response. And there's a lot of new programs that have come out of that, a lot of new approaches from our PD, additional training for mental health response, but most notable is what's called the A3 program, which means that anyone, anywhere, anytime in Contra Costa County can receive mental health crisis response within 15 minutes, that there will be somebody who will respond in person if needed to that event. We partnered with the county, with our 18 neighboring cities. That program's up and running. The county allocated $20 million annually to support this program. The biggest challenge is hiring mental health clinicians to support this program. And the idea behind this is that if there's an event, we have mental health professionals as opposed to law enforcement respond to that crisis. So a huge effort. Also a very heavy focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a community task force that's looking how to make Walnut Creek more inviting and open to all, and that doesn't just mean city operations, it's the community as a whole, all the organizations, individuals that make up our community. And we're also looking internally as well at how we communicate what our processes and systems are internally to be as inviting and inclusive as possible. Things had started to calm down and improve in 2021, and then we had a large organized retail theft event that occurred this Saturday before Thanksgiving of this past year. We were one of a handful of cities that were hit and targeted in the Bay Area. And just to give you a sense of scale on this, the whole event lasted 4 minutes. There were about 80 individuals that arrived in 25 vehicles in Broadway Plaza near the Nordstrom. They all entered the Nordstrom building, were inside for 1 minute, ran off with about $100,000 of merchandise, did about $25,000 of damage. A few employees were assaulted. They left in their vehicles and were on their way. And as I mentioned, the whole event lasted 4 minutes. We did make 3 arrests that evening and have made a few arrests since then, but there have been some challenges. Those being that the license plates were covered. And then in an era of COVID with folks wearing masks, it's not unusual for people to have their face covered. So it was more difficult to identify some of those folks and make arrests. City Council acted swiftly. It was a huge deal. It generated not only national attention, but international attention. We received media inquiries from as far away as London, Paris, and even New Zealand. And this was on the radar, and people were worried, and understandably so. So we wanted to make sure folks are safe and felt safe in Walnut Creek. So the City Council held an emergency meeting about a week later and sent a strong message. We had some of the others who are involved in the criminal justice system, being the district attorney and sheriff, who were there in person to explain their role in helping prosecute these folks and ensure that they receive the sentences that would be deserved. They mandated overtime immediately. We had more police patrols on the street. You know, that's the unofficial beginning of the shopping season for folks, where a lot of our retailers receive more than half of their revenues and profits during that 1 month time frame. So the future of downtown was absolutely critical, especially after a year and a half of COVID, when a lot of retailers have been struggling. So additional overtime, additional officers allocated money for 5 new police officers in order to create a new downtown beat. And then also we're investing in additional security cameras and drones to help monitor situations, hopefully preventing this type of activity, but if something were to occur, so we can better identify folks going forward. So those are really some of the challenges. I'll come back to the financial and economic impacts in a moment, but where we're at today, much better position. The economy is rebounding. There's a lot of life downtown, a lot of activity. You know, sadly, there were many businesses that did go under during COVID. But on the bright side, there are a lot of new businesses that are coming in. which is really encouraging to see that Walnut Creek is a place where folks want to be. We've spent a lot of time really trying to focus on how to help business go forward so that we are as appealing to businesses and residents as we can be going forward. And I mentioned the updated approaches to social wellness and public safety earlier. As always, we're focused on City Council's priorities. The Council sets priorities every 2 years. They did so in March of 2021, and these will be in place until about that time. These are all of equal weight. They're in alphabetical order on this screen. One is not more important than the other, but as I mentioned, diversity, equity, inclusion, I mentioned some of the work we're doing there. Also spoke to economic development. Walnut Creek has long been a leader in environmental sustainability, and it's the Council's intent that we will continue to be a leader into the future. You know, one of the things that flew under the radar in 2020 is our prior climate action plan. We achieved our targets in 2020. And normally that would be largely celebrated, but everybody was distracted on other things. So what we're doing now is working on creating a new sustainability and climate action plan that will really guide our actions for the next decade or further. Infrastructure and facilities have been a priority since at least 2017. Finding funding and creating plans, designs, building new facilities takes some time, so this will continue to be a priority, and I'll speak to this a little bit later. And then I spoke about public safety and social wellness already. So in terms of the city's finances, I mentioned that the third of the three emergencies we've been dealing with was economic and financial. You know, the good news is overall the city has a long history of being financially prudent and having sound financial practices, which served us well during the downturn. So this is not a story about how everything is on a downward trend and that the world's going to come to an end at this point in time. It's about that we're in sound financial shape now, but there are a lot of needs on the horizon. And what we're really doing is identifying those needs, what those costs would be, and how could we fund those going forward. So to give you a sense of scale, about $125 million operating budget overall. Of that, about $90 million is the general fund. And what that means, it's pretty much just as it sounds. We can generally spend that $90 million on anything that the city does. The other $35 million is restricted in use, and probably the best example of that is the Boundary Oak Golf Course that's owned and operated by the city. Is that if you go play a round of golf there and you pay your greens fees, that money has to be spent on the golf course. We can't use it to go invest in the leisure center and new police officers or anything else. It has to stay at the golf course. So there are multiple funds that in total equate to about $35 million that are restricted in a similar fashion. And then our annual capital budget, it varies significantly depending if there's a large project in the works for any given year. However, on average, we're about 10 to 12% or about 10% of the overall operating budget is spent on capital. So what did COVID mean for the city's finances? So keep in mind, again, about a $90 million general fund. We were projecting $25 million of revenue loss over 15 months, which is huge percentage-wise because most of that was the general fund. Good news is, I guess the silver lining is we only lost $15 million, so not as bad as the 25, but it's still significant on a percentage basis. And the reality is most of that was in the first few months. So from March of 20 through June 30th of 20, which was the end of our fiscal year, we lost $7.5 million in revenue in that 3 months. So the warning signs were flashing, danger, danger, this is going to be a challenge. We ended up holding, I believe it was 17 budget hearings with the City Council and Finance Committee. In a typical year, we have a handful to work through a budget, so it just gives you a sense of the scale. It was a very unpleasant time to be involved in this type of activity. A lot of very difficult and unpleasant decisions had to be made and ultimately were. And I give our mayor and council a lot of credit. They took a lot of heat for a lot of decisions, but ultimately they did what they thought was best in terms of balancing how do we provide critical services to the public and do so in a fiscally sound manner and looking at those trade-offs. We had planned to use some of our reserves or our money in the bank, our rainy day funds. When the revenue situation improved, we ended up not needing to do that. We did have to scale back program services, some staffing, and as many of our facilities were closed as well. And then we were fortunate that we did receive some federal stimulus funding and used $4 million to avoid having to make additional reductions or making additional difficult decisions. So a very challenging time. But as a result, we are in fairly sound shape. And as you can see here on the headline, I'd say we're fiscally healthy, but by no means fiscally wealthy. And I'll come back to that in just a minute because the needs in the future far outweigh our fiscal capacity in terms of what we're looking at. On the upside, no general fund debt, and we have very little debt overall. The only debt the city has are for the solar panels that are at the parking structure at Boundary Oak Golf Course, and it's not that much money in the scheme of things. We are evaluated, as are all 482 cities in California, by the independent state auditor, and we are in good fiscal condition. There is a level that's higher, which we are aspiring towards, but we're not there, but we are in good fiscal condition. Our rainy day funds, our money in the bank, are at basically industry standards or a little better, and we're well aware of pension costs and have set some money aside to deal with those liabilities heading forward. So let's talk about needs and where we're at. So as I mentioned, if you think about the last couple years, we've been in a reactive state, in a state of emergency, dealing with the emergencies I just mentioned. We're now focusing on the present and really preparing for the future. And so we've been reaching out to the community. We did a statistically valid survey in January, holding multiple discussions about what is important to the community, where are they seeing that we have needs. So probably not surprising, public safety, rating very high, especially after the last few years' events, not only in terms of maybe what we think of as traditional law and order with police patrols and response, but crime prevention. I mentioned mental health response, some social service response, obviously disaster preparedness, fire preparedness and response weighs heavily on folks, and for very good reason given the state of California these days. But then we also think about safety beyond just response, but what about our infrastructure? How safe is it? Particularly as we want folks to get out of their cars and walk or bike more. What are our roadways? What are our pedestrian crossings, our safe routes to school to ensure that we have a high level of safety? Homelessness. Sadly, homelessness has increased during the pandemic. In fact, the county's count numbers just came out regarding the homeless, and it verified what we have experienced more anecdotally, that homelessness has increased not only in Walnut Creek, but in the Bay Area and throughout California. And it's a challenge, and it's an area that Walnut Creek does participate very actively. We partner and provide funding to the Trinity Day Center, which is a center where homeless folks can go to get off the street, to get a meal, take a shower, a place to rest. We also help support the overnight winter shelter at the Armory by Civic Park, where during the winter months, folks can get out of the elements, whether it be the cold or rain, to have a nice place to sleep for the evening. We also partner with the county to fund 2 social workers that work in Walnut Creek each 40 hours a week, making contact with the homeless. You can imagine some of the chronically homeless may be resistant to government services and folks reaching out. So they really try to establish a relationship, help support them in the near term with the long-term goal of getting folks off the street into housing and ideally becoming self-supportive, which is the end goal. So we support that effort, and then we also have what's called a Homeless Outreach Program, or HOP team, in our police department, which are 2 officers that are dedicated to working on homeless issues. They partner closely with the social workers I just mentioned, with trying to provide a helping hand in getting folks off the street, but they're also there to hold folks accountable if laws are being broken as well. And that program has been very effective. It did go on hiatus for a while during the pandemic, but it's back up and running now. There's a lot of demand for programs, and I focused here on seniors and youth because we do have a large senior population. We do partner with a lot of our schools, but obviously we provide programming for everybody in the community. But Walnut Creek is older than average, and we have a lot of seniors that like a lot of the programs and use a lot of those programs. Many of the after-school programs at particularly our middle schools and some of our elementary schools, are actually provided by the city in a partnership. We run the libraries, and then, of course, we have, the Leisure Center, as I mentioned, that's owned and operated by the city, which is heavily used and is a big attraction to the area. Hearing from folks, not surprisingly, that COVID response and economic recovery remains important. It obviously aligns with one of the council priorities, so what we're hearing from the community very much aligns with where the city is at as well. And then lastly, I referenced infrastructure and facilities earlier. We do have a number of facilities. While overall the good news is that our infrastructure is in pretty good shape and can be maintained, we do have a handful of facilities that need to be replaced. And the most notable is the swim center, the pool and the swim center, the bathhouse at Heather Farm, as well as the community center that's there. It's actually turning 50 years old this year, and effectively it's been loved to death. It's wearing out. If any of you are swimmers or know of swimmers, the pool breaks down on a regular basis. We have to close it. A lot of maintenance goes into keeping it running, and it's really time to do something. But the cost is significant, probably in the neighborhood of $50 to $60 million to replace the full pool, the bathhouse, as well as the community center, which is beyond our fiscal capacity. So in looking at all of those programs, those services, the facilities, the City Council is contemplating pursuing a sales tax measure in the fall. And one thing that's important to note, in California, local governments cannot impose a tax on anyone. What city councils and local governments can do is ask the voters if they would like to tax themselves, and that is what the council is considering at this point in time. I do want to emphasize no decisions have been made. We're reaching out to the community to hear what's important, if this is something that they might consider. Then ultimately the city council will have to decide by early August whether or not to vote to put this on the ballot. So let's talk about what this means a little bit. The sales tax rate in Walnut Creek is 8.75%, which is the region's minimum within the county. Of that 8.75%, the city receives 1% of that. The other 7.75% goes to the state or to some other regional entities. So a half cent would obviously result in 1.5 cents coming to Walnut Creek. One of the things that we considered was if the tax rate went up a bit, would folks possibly shop elsewhere where they might find a lower tax rate? Seems unlikely that would occur, given that our neighboring cities have a higher tax rate. If we were to increase by 1/2 cent, we'd be on par with Pleasant Hill, but we would still be lower than Concord, Martinez, Orinda, and a few other neighboring cities. And there are some others that are over 10%, and we would obviously be at 9.25. Contemplating a 10-year sunset, the thought being is there's a lot we could accomplish in 10 years, and if we accomplish everything we set out to do, we may not need any funding, let it expire, or if there's an ongoing need, could go back out to the voters, but that's something we'd decide many years from now. Give you a sense, although it's hard to predict sales tax revenues right now because spending patterns are still quite erratic. We saw a big shift from services during COVID, travel, dining out, retail, to people buying cars and other physical goods, and now we're seeing a shift back the other way. But we're estimating in that range you can see there. The cost is about $10 a month to the average family, and one of the things for why the city is contemplating a sales tax as opposed to, say, a parcel tax or something that would be placed upon property owners or residents is that roughly half of the sales taxes are generated by non-city residents, by visitors. I mentioned we're a regional hub where folks visit, and the reality is folks drive on our streets, they park in our parking garages, they use our parks, they hike in our open space, they require that we add additional police services, so if they're going to benefit from their services, the thought is to have greater equity and have them help fund those costs as well. So that is everything I had this evening. If you have not already filled out the survey, I would encourage you to do so. Every resident should have received a physical mailer from me, actually, and then it's also available online at walnut-creek.org/survey. And we have received a few thousand responses, are reviewing those to understand what the themes and feedback are from the community. And with that, I am happy to entertain any questions or any feedback you may have.
I guess since this is an informal session, if anyone has any questions or comments, fire away. It'd be more like a dialogue instead of an official. Anything?
Thank you.
I've got some questions.
All right, go for it.
I always have some questions. The one early point you brought up related to the tax, no advocating for measures one way or the other. I assume that means when we're acting in our official capacity. So when I leave here, I can act as individual citizen, right? That's okay?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, great. You said something that caught my attention. So we're still in a state of emergency for COVID based on the city proclamation. Is that city proclamation, are we essentially lining up with the state's proclamation, or does the city actually feel that we're still in the state of emergency?
You know, we've been following in terms of health orders, we've been effectively following the direction from the state and from the county and following their lead. So we have kept this in effect for now, but we're closely watching that to see when it'll be dialed back. At one point, and I don't recall the exact numbers, I believe the state had something along the lines of 87 or 88 emergency orders in place related to COVID, and I think that number's down to maybe 10. So, you know, as the situation hopefully continues to improve as it has been, we'll see those unwind, and we would unwind ours as well.
Great, thanks. One of the slides, I think this was still related to COVID. You had a bullet point about making difficult decisions. Are there just a couple of examples you can share?
Yeah, sure. So library is a very good example. The two libraries, one is owned by the city, one's owned by the county, but we operate those in a partnership with the county. The county provides a base level of 40 hours a week, and pre-COVID, they were open 56 hours a week, and the city funds that difference. We scaled back all those open hours, that additional funding. We scaled back most of our arts and recreation programs, one, because many we couldn't offer, and according to health orders, those had to be scaled back. We fund crossing guards at school. Those were scaled back. Now, schools weren't in session for a while, but that was challenging. We've reduced basically all of our administrative expenses that you might imagine. We tightened all of those up. We did reduce, we eliminated about 10 positions within the city. We did use some funds to help fund a restaurant grant program, which we had to bring from elsewhere to help fund that. So those are some of the types of decisions that were at play.
Great, thanks. And my final, this one's more of a comment or feedback on the homelessness issue. And I do, when I have the time available, I do dial into the Walnut Creek Homeless Task Force so I can be informed of what's going on and what the programs are, who I can call. The one thing that, at least for me, I've found is a frustration, and other folks I've talked to sort of have the similar frustrations. If somebody pulls up, a homeless person pulls up in their car in front of your home on the public street and decides they're going to spend the night there in front of your home, and if you call the police, unless things have changed, the police department dispatcher has been trained to basically say, well, it's not a crime to be homeless, and therefore they won't dispatch anyone out, even though you have a stranger sleeping in front of your house. My feedback, or my something to maybe take back, whether it's to city management or city council, because I'm not sure where the directive comes from, is I think when citizens called police dispatch, we can do better than the answer that they've been giving. That's my feedback.
Sure, appreciate that.
Thanks. Well, thank you. Do you guys, I want to make sure I don't miss any opportunities for your feedback or questions. Great.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your
Appreciate
time
it.
this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Feel like we should be giving you a round of applause. Yeah, no, thank you very much. That was very helpful. All right, so that's on commission considerations. Is there anything else, Mr. Secretary, under commission considerations you'd like to bring up?
There is not.
All right,
Do it. No.
thank you. Then we will go backwards to public hearings. And we have one public hearing tonight, proposed pre-approved accessory dwelling unit plans, city housing program. So does city staff have a presentation?
Yes, as soon as I can find where it vanished. Swear it was here. Oh.
Brad Evanson's going to give this presentation. He's a contract planner with RGS Consulting, and he's been working on some special projects for us. Brad's been doing a great job on taking over Pradu, and so he's going to present what we have tonight, and going to look for a recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Great, thank you, and welcome.
There we go. Okay, so this is Apologies for the delay there. Good evening. My name is Brad Evanson. Good evening. My name is Brad Evanson. I'm a contract planner with Regional Government Services. As Chip stated, helping out the Community Development Department with a variety of interesting projects, and the pre-approved ADU program is one of them. So with your permission, I'll go ahead and get into the presentation here. There we go. Okay. This is, the city is developing a permit-ready accessory dwelling unit program to facilitate the construction of housing. And the city is seeking Design Review Commission review of 4 proposed accessory dwelling unit plans to form the basis for the program. And the state has declared a lack of available housing to be a crisis. They've adopted several pieces of legislation to facilitate the construction of housing, including reducing legislation applicable to housing construction and offering grants to organizations to encourage the construction of housing. And the city was awarded a planning grant under Senate Bill 2, the Jobs and Housing Creation Act, to develop a pre-approved permit-ready ADU program. The city's architecture consultant conducted a survey of lots and residential zoning districts within the city to establish basic site planning parameters for the ADU plans. And in general, the ADU plans are designed to fit most residential lots within the city, maintaining a 4-foot property line setback and a 10-foot setback from a main residence. The city's architecture consultant also conducted a survey of architectural styles within the city, within the existing residential neighborhoods. They've identified a number of different architectural styles throughout various neighborhoods all across the city. And they have identified 3 that were determined to provide the greatest flexibility and consistency and compatibility with the existing residential neighborhoods. These include mid-century modern, which is mainly characterized by flat or low-pitched gable roofs, large overhangs, exposed rafter tails, transom windows. There's cottage or early traditional architecture, low-pitched side gable roofings, sorry about that typo there, single-hung windows, horizontal siding, and picket or X cross-style railing on covered porches. And then California ranch architecture, which is characterized by a 4 to 12 pitch gable roof, brick or stone wainscoting, and board and batten siding with louvered shutters on the windows. And with the program, the goals of the program are to maximize the ability to fit different lots and maximize the ability to address different space configuration and amenity wants and needs for the citizens and residents of the city. 4 plans have been proposed. All offer all 3 architectural style options that we've just discussed. These include a 408 square foot studio, a 615 square foot 1-bedroom, 672 square foot 1-bedroom, and an 840 square foot 2-bedroom 1-bath. And here, got the studio. It's a rectangular 12 by 40 footprint. It can fit a queen bed or include a built-in Murphy bed as an option. It has an adaptable bathroom that can be converted to ADA accessibility, and it has a covered porch at the entry. The next one, the 615 square foot 1-bedroom, it's much closer to square than rectangular, 28 by 27 footprint, has a walk-in closet in the bedroom, an adaptable bathroom that can be converted to ADA accessibility, and a covered porch at the entry. The next one is larger, 672 square foot 1-bedroom. This is, again, another rectangular design that can be more optimized to fit on narrow lots. It's 42 by 21 footprint, sliding glass door at the end of the living room with an optional covered porch. Again, the adaptable bathroom and a covered porch at the entryway. And the last one is the 840 square foot 2-bedroom. And this is also more square than rectangular, 30 by 28 footprint. It's got kind of mirror image dual bedrooms with the adaptable bathroom in between, and again, a covered porch at the entry. And the administrative details of this program, those are still being worked on. The city's consultant is preparing the administrative elements of the program. These are expected to be reviewed when the program is presented to the Planning Commission City Council. Those would include details of the application forms, the applicant criteria, procedural elements, FAQs, a website to be integrated into the city's website, and other marketing and informational documents. Based on a recommendation from the Design Review Commission, staff would present the proposed ADU plans to the Planning Commission along with administrative program details. Any recommended changes to the ADU plans that the Design Review Commission does pose will also be presented to the Planning Commission. And then staff will request a recommendation on the program from the Planning Commission to the City Council. And based on that, our staff's recommended that the Design Review Commission review the proposed ADU plans, conduct a public hearing, receive any comments, make any comments, and then adopt a resolution recommending that the Planning Commission incorporate the proposed ADU plans into the city's permit-ready ADU program for presentation to the council. And with that, staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. So do any of the commissioners, Commissioner Valia, do you have questions or comments?
I think it's more of a question. I think the elevations are just a representation here. It's not that, the floor plan is very much given. It's got a square footage, it's got a layout, and it's very detailed, I would say. But the elevations are just there as an interpretation of that floor plan, I guess, attached to the either the low-pitched roofs or the ranch tiles or the cottage tiles, but I assume there's freedom for the elevations.
Yes, that is correct. And the city's consultant, the RRM Architecture, they are on Zoom right now, and they will make a presentation that'll go much more into the detail of the elevations in particular. And they'll show each of the plans rendered in all three architectural styles. So yes, the intention is that a customer that comes in and wants to participate in the program would identify the unit, the particular unit that they're interested in, and then based on the style of their residence, they would then select the architectural elevation that best suits or has the most compatibility with their existing residence. They could request anyone they wanted, and we would, that'll be part of the administrative details that the architect will work out. But basically, yeah, they'll have the opportunity to kind of freestyle with what they're looking for, work with staff to figure out which one suits it best. There may be the opportunity for some substitution of materials. I'll leave it to the architect to elaborate further on some of that. But we want to provide flexibility, but we also have to provide some limited options to ensure that this is an efficient program. And
So if I have a ranch style and I want a contemporary ADU, is that a possibility?
At this point, nothing has been eliminated. We would probably take a closer detailed look at your application, and depending on how your property's laid out, it could very well be that it would not necessarily be a concern. Depending on the visibility, it could be a concern. We have not finalized those details yet.
I would say, though, the intent is to match the architectural style of that property. That's the intent. I don't know if it's a requirement.
As intent?
Yeah.
Yeah. And refresh my memory, what is the height limitation for those ADUs?
16 feet, if I remember correctly.
16 feet. Okay.
Any further questions?
You got a presentation?
I think my question is mostly about flexibility, so adding on to what Carlos said, I mean, I think, I would guess procedurally, what you're hoping to do is have a pre-approved item, so you don't necessarily have to come back here.
That is exactly correct. The goal for to walk this all the way through to the end would be the Design Review Commission reviews the proposed ADU plans, offers any comments, suggestions, changes, amendments, anything like that. It then goes to consideration before the Planning Commission and the City Council, and the plans that ultimately get adopted in the program The architect would then draw up construction drawings based on those with the details and materials sets for all 3 architectural styles on each plan, and those would then be plan checked. And then once those are signed off on and stamped off by the city, then it effectively becomes it's permit ready at that point. It's an applicant would work with staff to take a generic site plan template, place their house, their existing residence on there, any other elements that are on there, like a tree or a detached garage or something, and then place the ADU. And if everything checks out, it would get signed off on, and they could pull their permit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so effectively, in the end, I mean, really what we're looking for is kind of a, pardon the term, but like a cookie cutter plan, 3 versions of each, and they would work with staff to decide which one was best.
Yeah.
They might have the flexibility to do so, but, I mean, given that, I mean, I support the initiative of having the ADUs. I think it's an important thing. I think I would just like to see the plans have some flexibility in the size, like if there's a range, like if it's a 28-foot dimension, if you just put on there, it's approved for 28 to 30 or 28 to 26. If you have that, then it just to give you more tools to actually make it easy to have these things pass through.
And that would be something that we would have to work with the building department staff to ensure that if there was a way that they could plan check a set of plans that had that kind of flexibility in it. I don't know that they could, and then pre-stamp it that way. If there's details that are not locked in, I don't know if they can do that.
I mean, there probably is. It's just, I think, you know, as detailed, and I'm sure the architect did a lot of great work, but, you know, you're going to come in and you're going to find situations where it doesn't quite fit. And it just would be nice to offer the citizens the ability to modify a little bit here and there.
And that might be a question that the architect might want to chime in on, but if he does have a short presentation.
Yeah, let's hear what he has to say then.
All right,
Thanks.
Get out of mine.
Let me ask, before we go to the architect's presentation, so I guess my first question is, what does permit ready mean in the context of, I thought or believe under the new state law, and I did a quick look at the ADU handbook that the state put together, that I could come in and put up let's say I'm going to do a 700 square foot, it's under the limit, ADU in my backyard. And it literally can be any style I want, and there is no DRC involvement under the law. So what are we offering our citizens by saying, hey, this one's permit ready versus you want to put one up that looks completely different and the state says you can do that? That's where I'm getting a little lost.
Sure. The key difference between the scenario you describe and this is that your scenario, yes, there's no DRC involved, but there's still going to be a 2-week to 2-month plan check process, whereas this has been plan checked. This is literally permit ready. Once staff and the applicant work to take the site plan template and draw it up to effectively mimic their property, if everything checks out under the parameters of the program itself, then it is expected and intended to be a one fee, one shot over-the-counter permit effectively. No plan check involved because that's already been done.
I might add design fees as well, so it saves the property owner the design fee.
So does that mean the package comes with structural and
Yes.
mechanical and electrical?
Correct.
Everything?
Correct.
So there's no chance for me to do additional things. Well, structurally, I'm not supposed to, but say electrically, if I want to move things around and have different layouts of my outlets and my switches and my lights and,
In all likelihood, and I'll leave it to the architect to confirm this, the expectation is that there will be some flexibility to tweak a location of outlets or switches or plugs or something like that, where it's a minor thing that isn't going to be, isn't going to have major structural impacts or
code impact.
code impacts or affect like the floor plan layout. But in general, it's a set plan that that has been plan checked and is ready to have a permit issued on it. If you wish to go ahead and modify after the fact and come back in and submit for permit revisions, that would be handled as a separate transaction and a separate issue. But the idea with this is that it is a flexibility, or it's not so much that it's flexible, it's that it's efficient, it's done. It has been plan checked, structural, electrical, plumbing, foundation, the whole 9 yards. It's ready to go. And the idea is that someone can come in literally to the counter, we can get out the blank site plan template, drop their property real quick, place the ADU. If everything looks good to go, say I want the 672 square foot one bedroom, I want it with the mid-century modern architectural treatment with blue with white trim, boom, over the counter, pay your one fee, get your set of plans, go forth and build.
So when you say 1 fee, it's not, it's the fee for buying that design, or it's the fee for going through the process of?
It's a combined fee. It is all of that. And again, that's part of the administrative details that are still being worked out in terms of what would the cost of that be, what is truly going to be included in all that, what can we include in that based on how all the housing laws have changed recently coming out of Sacramento. There's a lot that will need to be looked at and gone over by the lawyers to make sure that everything is hunky-dory and all that fun stuff. But that is the intention, is that it is literally a permit-ready package. Someone wants this plan, this style, this material set, this color set. The site plan is drawn up. Planning gives a thumbs up. Building has already given a thumbs up. They put their stamp on it already. So it then is just literally the over-the-counter, here you go, here's your permit.
Okay, so so if I choose one of these, I essentially bypass the need to plan check to make sure it meets building code.
Correct.
But the other thing I heard both of you mention, so let's say again, I'm gonna do 700 square foot, my own design, so okay, you have to put it through plan check for building code compliance, I gotta pay for that, that makes sense. But I thought under a certain size, we are not allowed to do a design review. What would that design review be?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I thought I heard both of you say if I didn't go with a pre-approved, I'd have plan check fees and design fees.
No, do you have design fees because you need to pay an architect to draw your plans?
Got it.
Design,
My own.
yes.
And
my
structural
own.
and-
Got it.
Yeah, and the structural engineer and the
Yep, yep.
electrical. and-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then this makes more sense to me. We're basically saying, hey, if you build one of these, we'd prefer you build one of these, because as a city, we've decided we like how it looks. We're gonna make it a lot easier for you. You're just gonna come in and pay a little bit, and we're gonna give you the permit, and you can start going.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So essentially, this is Design Review Commission's one chance to help design or form or approve the designs of some ADUs that will go. Not all ADUs that go in are gonna use this, but the ones that do, you'll have your hand in it.
Do we have, so when we, and this is a question you might not be able to answer tonight, but when we come up with these pre-approved, are there things we can add such as, I know we're trying to add setbacks. Can we add things like the shortest side of the building will face the adjoining property owner's fence, and all the windows won't be staring into the adjoining property owners? And I'm bringing this up because in my neighborhood, just a few blocks from me, somebody plopped in a pre-man, the crane dropped in the ADU, and the way it's situated, the tallest part is up against the fence line of the adjoining homeowner, and the tallest part with a lot of windows are now looking right into the next door neighbor's kitchen and backyard. Could we consider as a part of this having these pre-approved ones set to, in a way that the way they get orientated on the property and the way the windows, et cetera, of the ADU, the design minimizes as much as possible the privacy impact to the next door neighbor?
We have talked with the city attorney about this, and we do have some ability to establish some, for lack of a better term, regulatory criteria, because this is an optional program. As your previous example, you can come in and submit your own ADU plan and do your own process, and that would then be subject to all of the flexibility that the recent changes in state legislation would allow, and the city doesn't have the design review oversight in those circumstances. But in this case, the city attorney has given a basic indication that we do have the ability to offer or impose some potential regulatory criteria because it's an optional program. That being said, as the administrative details of the program are put together, we will obviously be running those past the city attorney's office to make sure that everything is all appropriate and above board and everything, but yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And staff, honestly, speaking in my life as a former staff planner, sitting at the front counter with people, we encourage that anyway, just as we talk to a resident. This is coming in, they're gonna put it on their property anyway, so we're gonna look at them, drop their little site plan template and go, you know, I think it might fit better over here. If you like turn it this way, then you can do this, and that way you've got the back of the fence here, and you've got the minimal windows that look in there, and they won't be looking in all of your windows. And so we do encourage that anyway, but in terms of regulatory guidance or encouragement or something along those lines, yeah, we can look at doing those sorts of things and then make sure that it passes city attorney muster.
That's great. And then I guess the other thing, to my other understanding is that if you buy the pre-manufactured ADU, there's really very minimal involvement, even on the plan check side, because it's pre-manufactured.
Right.
You're probably just looking at the foundation and
Correct.
some of the utilities, and people can just drop in whatever they want under a certain size. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're not there yet, right? I mean, this is not pre-manufactured. This is a pre-step or
Yeah,
step before pre-manufacturing.
Yeah, these are not like pre-manufactured. These are like actual new stick construction on a foundation, just everything you'd normally expect. But yeah, no, there are the pre-manufactured ones, and yeah, there've been a couple news stories about those that have landed literally in the community, and
Yeah, I brought that up, Commissioner Valia, because this is on Tamarisk. I just happened to be driving by at the right time and saw the crane dropping it in. So it pre-manufactured, it's dropped in, and then all of a sudden you saw the neighbors' reactions on Nextdoor. So that under the law they can do that, and
Right.
it's happening because I saw that first one firsthand.
No, I get it. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is that if this becomes successful, pre-manufactured is not too far away from
and it could very well be that might be a future program that we would look into. There have been a couple companies that do like flat pack pre-manufactured structures like that have contacted us to ask if they can participate in the program.
Right.
And it's like, well, the program's not done yet, and this is how we're doing it. So it may be in the future that this could be an amendment or an addition to the program, an addendum to it somewhere along the way. But at this point, we're just looking at the stick build, new construction, ADU, traditional, all that, and having that plan checked and part of this program.
Okay, and then just to confirm, I guess the other thing I think I heard is that the desire with this is to encourage or require the homeowner to pick the style that's closest to their existing home,
Yes,
which is a great idea.
yes.
But why is that a great idea? I mean, it all depends. I mean, it isn't the back of my backyard, and I want them temporary. Why is it a good idea to
Well,
go?
I think that if you want to do that, I think you'll have the capability
I have
to
the
go
options,
about,
yes.
you could go, well, I want this, and staff may not agree, then they can actually do whatever they want, can't they? I mean,
At this point, I don't think there's anything that says they can't, but that's kind of based on our design guidelines that we have in
I know,
place for,
I understand that.
yeah, so we just kind of carried that through to this.
But my understanding is with this being an optional program, you know, if you go the way we'd like you to, your costs will be less and your speed will be better. I probably am the one who should answer the question on why it's better, only because I made the comment. I just think it's better because, you know, when you think about the architectural integrity of a neighborhood, the one that went in this neighborhood on Tamarisk, if you just drive by and you look at it versus the homes, it's an eyesore. And sitting somewhere else, it may not be an eyesore, but that's just one
No,
person's
I
opinion.
understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
But yeah, I
So
think,
that's sort of a case-by-case study.
yeah. Yeah.
And to be fair, I mean, the expectation is with this program that when you come into the front counter to purchase your plan set here, and as we're drawing up the site plan for your property, if you say, hey, you know, I really want to have the modern architecture in the back, and as you can see, my property is fairly deep, and this is going to be kind of hidden, really not visible from the neighbors, not visible
Right.
from the street, we may go, all right, it's your property.
Exactly.
And I mean, the idea is, as Chip and others have stated, is that maintaining the integrity of a neighborhood, architecturally, visually, all that, generally, my understanding is it helps property values, just in maintaining a consistent image and a consistent style vibe through the neighborhood. Some areas, eclectic is the operational word, and it can have multiple styles on one property. I mean,
Anarchic is a word. Anarchy.
So with that, should we allow the
Yeah.
yeah.
the consultant to
Oh, yes.
All right.
run through the presentation?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, so it was,
I think that was my cue.
That was your cue.
You have the floor.
and I think they were
Good
going to give
evening. My name is Randy Russin with RM Design Group. I am, or we are, your consultant on this for both architecture and some of the implementation documents. I almost feel like I should forgo any visual presentation after Brad's and dig into this long list of questions y'all have, because I think we'll be able to add a lot to that conversation, having done these types of projects, city administered ADU projects all over the state. But we'll run through the designs right now real quickly. I'm not sure if sharing my screen, let's see if that works.
Randy, go ahead and try to share your screen.
We'll see how that works, and if not,
we'll take care of it.
I'm not a pro at either of these elements here, so let's, always takes me a moment to get there. So, Windows, that's the one I want, how about that? All right. Gonna do full screen. Someone confirm that you actually can see what I have up there.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'm getting better at this then. So, as I said, we'll do a quick walkthrough of the program and kind of how we get there. Maybe I should preface this as to what our process is. We initiate meetings with the city where we look at your existing ordinances, state ordinances, and come up with what the constraints of the project might be. We do, in your particular case, what we call a windshield survey of parcels around the city, as well as get input from staff to help determine an appropriate architectural style. I have to say that Walnut Creek is actually not, residentially does not have a ton of variety. They're very traditional, lots of California ranch, some traditional, and not much deviation from that. We don't see, almost no stucco and red tile roofs, things that you would expect all over California. So we use that process to narrow down the styles, and we try to determine what would be typical lots in the community and look at those from Google Maps and try to take some measurements, look for size and configuration opportunities on these lots. Certainly our goal is to try to cover as many housing opportunities available within the city. That is the goal of this program, is to facilitate housing. At the same time, the city recognizes that the state has tied your hands as far as things like design review. So this is also viewed as an opportunity to provide designs that have a certain level of compatibility with a neighborhood and a community, and provide those in a way that they're incentivized by the cost discount associated with using a pre-approved, cost and time discount associated with a pre-approved. I think most cities are finding that as a real opportunity there to bring these in, and because just as well someone could come through with a 20 by 20 flat roofed stucco box and put it in their backyard, and you have, as long as it passed building code, there is no design review component of that. So that I come from a cute little quaint town just like yours, and nobody likes to see that. So we look for ways to help combat that. So with that, we present to the staff a variety of configurations within the size range that was designated in the program, and evaluate those back and forth. We spend quite a few meetings doing that and narrow it down to 4, which we then take to what you see now. And we provide some, at this point, rendering sort of how the different styles will manifest themselves in the plans that you see. So that's what I'm gonna carry you through right here. Now that you understand how we got there, and this will probably be fairly quick and brief, feel free to stop me along the way. I tend to move quickly, and that may not be necessary. So that being said, this is an example of how we look at configurations of typical lots. We're trying to test fit. Here is our plan A, which is a very small linear plan, which I often encourage cities to utilize something along this, because a very shallow one fits in almost all most shallow backyards. State regulation says you can put an ADU at 4 feet. No matter what your zoning says, you can put an ADU at 4 feet. The consequence to that is many people do. Excuse my dog in the background there. And so we design, in speaking to the concept of views onto neighbors or from neighbors' property, we essentially design it anticipating 2 of the sides would be the sides that are at 4 feet. And because that setback is less than the typical 5 foot, we start heading towards issues of protected eaves, number of protected openings, how many openings we have. So the consequence of that is it actually reduces the windows. And you could not put this same unit oriented another way as close to the property line because of fire hazard issues. So we sort of trick the system into making sure that these do get oriented in a way that are oriented interior to the site and not exterior. I heard that question come up, so I thought I'd add that in there. So this is plan A. It's a very, we're gonna call it a very efficient plan. It's 408 feet. It's only 12 foot deep. It fits just about anywhere. One of the things that come up with offering something through the city is the question of whether you're subject to accessibility code, building CBC chapter 11A. As a resident, you typically wouldn't have to do this, as if you or I go in and just do our house, nobody can say anything. As a public entity providing designs, there is a legal question as to what your responsibility is there. And every jurisdiction I work with, we have the city or county attorney weigh in on this and make recommendations. The path that your city has taken is to make some of these at least adaptable to be fully accessible or adaptable units, so that that opportunity is there. And certainly these are used for, aging in place, your parents moving in here, whatever that may be. So that there's, real practical application of that also. I'm not going to go into heavy detail on any of these particular plans. I think they're very straightforward and simple, other than opportunities to customize. This one's pretty simple, but the fact is we just show a sample furniture layout. You could lay out however, and the truth is, if one were to decide you want to put a kitchen wall in another location in this unit, as long as you're meeting building code, which will specify, the types of outlets you have on there and the spacing on a counter and that sort of thing, typically a city would, or ultimately would be the field inspector, would recognize that you're still meeting code and you could go forward. That's little nuances we'll be working out with your chief building official, but that would be the typical approach to something like this. So let me actually get more into the plans here and less into my talking. Here's how we see the small one manifesting itself in the different styles. And again, your city does appreciate good design, and the reality of these little units is they're boxes, and there's only so much you can add to them. And part of the goal is to make them affordable to get done, so you can provide the housing. So you don't want to go too far. We think there's a balance here that is reached. We typically with either your housing planner or your community development director, someone within planning, will designate how we approach the materials and colors of these types of things. Typically, the colors would be required to match the house, the primary house, although not necessarily. That could, I would imagine, the opportunity for an over-the-counter review of compatible colors that match the house, or maybe someone wants to repaint their entire house and this at the same time. That would also go together. But the goal is okay, you have the same and similar materials. So let's say the California Ranch, while we show siding and a brick wainscot, and the main house has board and bat and river rock wainscot, that would be viewed at a intake level from a planner as being compatible with the primary residence and would be acceptable. That is the typical way this would go forward, to create that flexibility, which I've heard concerns about. So these are, in effect, color examples and how we see the materials playing out on each one of these units. This is the Plan B, which is a square, a little bit bigger unit, full 1-bedroom, not a shower. We've got in this case, a tub. We do have variations on these, some options. As you see here, you see an optional porch, that it can be an optional slider or a window off to the left side there. The bathroom can be, we've got another version where the walk-in closet gets smaller and you can get a full accessible bath and side-by-side washer and dryer if that is what the goals are. So we're able to put that level of flexibility into these designs. Typically, we don't add flexibility to the outside as in adding extra feet, because it ends up one of two ways. You either have multiple engineering requirements, like multiple sets of calculations, or the building is designed on a worst case scenario, effectively adding costs to the less than worst case scenario, which is also contrary to the goal of the program. I'll march along here. This is how that unit plays itself out. We repeatedly use similar colors and materials throughout the project to show how they manifest themselves in each one of the designs. for each one of the floor plans. This is the Plan C, a little bit larger, but again, rectilinear, but gives you essentially a full one-bedroom layout, full adaptable bath, large living area, and opportunities to orient the end or the side as the primary entry and porch. Give you an idea how that might look in the built state in the backyard. This is our final plan. We have 4 plans in the package. This is the 2-bedroom. Again, pushing over 800 square feet. We again provide full adaptable bath, full kitchen, nice living area. Really solid. Once you get into this level, there is, literally a small family that you could house in this detached unit. And we find a lot of demand for these configurations. And here's how it plays out in the different styles as we shared before. I think that's unless you have questions about any of those particular ones, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and attempt to answer some of your earlier questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Commissioner Newsome, any questions?
One, so how about flipping the plans?
Yes, the idea is that they would be, you could do mirrored plans.
Okay, so that's allowed. Okay, good.
Commissioner Valia?
Yes, on Plan B, couldn't that bath on Plan B move closer to the bedroom? I like configuration of all the baths on Plan A, C, and D, but this one is so far from the bedroom. I mean, shouldn't it be closer to the bedroom and create that availability from the bedroom and for everybody from the social areas? It's way up there in the corner.
Certainly one approach to that. In this case, it's basically balanced on the living space. It could be reconfigured. I mean, a different design could apply to where that is closer to an ensuite master bath type situation where it's servicing the bedroom primarily. But as you slide that up, it creates a dead space up in that upper right-hand corner, which is a little less usable. I mean, effectively, if that were the goal, it would be a different layout for this building.
Do we have other questions? I have comments for our next stage. I don't have any questions for the architect.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer just a couple things that I heard come up. I mean, I do think we talked about size and flexibility, location on the property. The state allows for 4-foot minimum setbacks, 16-foot height limit. We talked about the style versus the main house and the general impact that you're at least able, in this situation, you're able to control the design. And it would be, I heard conversation about, well, what if you wanted the modern and you had a ranch house? Would that be allowed? That's going to be I mean, certainly your recommendations. It's not my designs. It's not my project. I mean, it's my design. It's not my project. You guys own these. So, and unique to this situation, you can put constraints on these as the end user would come in and get the advantages of no engineering cost, no architectural cost, and no cost and time waiting for somebody to do that stuff. There is, certainly an advantage there to doing that. So, and because the city owns the plans, if they wanted to put constraints on it, such as the style must match the primary house style, that would be perfectly acceptable within the law and within the rights of what you could do. And I think, sounds like maybe that's a consideration, but that is I think something's still being hashed out with planning as to how we approach this. So they may even appreciate the direction on that issue.
Right. Do
With
we
that,
have,
I have nothing else.
do we have more questions?
I mean, I guess. I noticed that our landscape architect friends are not here. Is there any flexibility, or is there any way that you can impose landscape requirements in this ADU?
To my knowledge, I don't think so. I mean, I guess locally we could have said, you know, if you're going to use our plans, you've got a landscape, but we haven't considered that, I think.
No, we haven't gotten that far into the details of the plan. I don't know that that's been discussed. I think the expectation is that the lots are landscaped already, so this is gonna fit in and around whatever existing landscaping there is, and presumably a homeowner that has to tear up their landscaping to allow for the ADU to be built would then presumably re-landscape their yard to work around the new structure.
Yeah, I mean, if you end up taking out a bunch of trees, and is there a need? And I'm not the most articulate person to say this in the landscape vein, but to what you said, you're putting a building there with no context around it. I mean, it might be good to require some screening in some instances. I don't know.
I just don't know that we can.
Yeah.
In
We
general.
can look into that.
In general, I believe, but it's a question, when someone is building a brand-new single-family home or completely tearing down or doing a massive remodel of their single-family home, not a development, the city does not enforce any required landscape, right?
For a new home,
For, yeah, if it's just a single story, not like a development, like
a single
single-family home,
Yes, we would require landscaping,
you'd require it to be landscaped, but would you require?
mostly the front yard.
But would you require, as Commissioner Newsom says, our landscape commissioners, our friends, to review such things, or is it just, hey, you have to landscape it, you can't leave it bare dirt?
We like I said, we require landscaping for, if design review is required for a single-family home, which it's not for every single-family home, then we would require landscaping.
Okay. And then I also believe, and it's a question because I'm not sure, the state ADU laws preempt our tree ordinances. Is that correct? So if there was a highly protected tree where I wanted to put down my ADU, I can just have the tree removed?
I believe that's correct. I would have to double check with the city attorney on the specific details of that, but yeah, I've heard that as well.
Yeah, I was doing research today in prep for this meeting and reading the ADU handbook from the state, and they virtually have rendered null and void any local laws, CCNRs, homeowner association rules, et cetera, that get in the way of putting the ADU in. So it might be worth in this, pre-approved program to maybe have something where if there's a highly protected tree or something in one part of the lot and there's enough room on another part of the lot for this pre-approved program, that maybe we require that they not take down the highly protected tree.
And we will work with the city attorney on that to see what ability we do have to impose that. And again, that would be another thing where staff would certainly encourage, you got this beautiful protected tree here, and you got space to put this over there, so why not put it over there? But yeah, we will be, as we work with the architect to come up with the actual program details and how are we gonna look, like what sort of site placement criteria are we gonna impose, candidate criteria, or what standards are they gonna have to adhere to, live up to participate in the program. And again, because it's an optional program, we do have some flexibility based on the city attorney's preliminary determination on things. So we'll see what we can do and try to find that balance between flexibility to allow for housing to come in at a rapid pace without destroying the fabric of the community that we all know and love.
Great, thanks. Are there any more questions?
It just came up. I mean, is there any limitation to interior finishes, or it's just the shell that we're concerned with?
I would actually defer to the architect as to what they are anticipating to spec on the interiors. I don't know that there are limitations, but I mean, it's going to be a preset material list, I guess. Randy, you want to clarify that a little bit?
Sure, happy to. The goal here is to allow as much flexibility as possible for any end user on this. I would imagine we're not even, there'll be some degree of like window specification, but as long as you're meeting the Title 24, shading coefficient and whatnot, that you would have flexibility to even change, your window type. Certainly finishes on the interior would be up to the end user. We are not specifying anything like that. It's really just checking the boxes for the building code. So there's a lot of flexibility, or ideally, there's a lot of flexibility that's built into it.
All right, before moving into commissioner comments, any last questions of the commissioners? All right, then we'll move to commissioner comments. Commissioner Villia?
Public comment? Public comment?
Oh, I'm
So-
sorry, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one step.
Okay,
On
sorry.
my list, I apologize. Because it's a public hearing, is there any members of the public who wish to speak on this topic? First, we'll start with Chambers. Would anybody like to address the Design Review Commission on this topic? There being none, Mr. Secretary, do we have anyone on Zoom who would like to make comment?
With the attendees any attendees on Zoom who'd like to make any comments, raise their hands. Seeing none? Seeing none.
All right, and thank you for reminding me, Mr. Secretary, so that'll close the public comment part of the hearing. So now we can move to Commissioner Villia for your comments. Sorry.
No, I think this is definitely a program that's going to benefit a lot of people. I mean, because not having to go hire a structural engineer, an architect, and something that fits their site and their architectural style, and that's a great beginning. And it's not preventing people from going the other route and trying the different ADU and explore different alternatives. It's just going to take a little bit more time. But people who want these things fast and don't want to go through all the review processes and everything that a normal project goes through, I think this is a very good idea. And I think you got 4 models there that are, I guess they're suitable for most of our neighborhood conditions in Walnut Creek. So I think it's a good program.
Great. Commissioner Newsom.
Well, I agree. I think it's kind of a clever idea that will, for many of these installations, it will actually provide a level of quality that you won't necessarily get otherwise. So I think I'm really supportive of this and also of the mission just to create more affordable housing. So thank you.
Great, thank you. My comments, I think the concept, the program is a brilliant idea. I think we help the homeowner fast-track their ADU, but then we get back in exchange for that, the city gets back some level of control over the look and the design and the placement. So it's a brilliant concept, very supportive of that concept. I would, overall, the architecture, with one exception, I like everything that I see because they look like miniature little homes. The only thing I wasn't a fan of, and just in as role as a design review commission, I have to say it with no disrespect, Plan A modern, it looks a little shed-like. So I don't know if there's a little redesign that could happen to that one. I know there's not a lot of room on that one to do something with the roof line, but it's really the roof line that made me feel that way. All the others I think look terrific. I would be in favor of some conditions to go along with, and noting I'm just one person here, so I'm just going to put out my thoughts. I do think we should maybe impose some level of landscape design / tree preservation if it doesn't cause the inability to put the ADU, because I think that's what the state law gets to. I would also propose, in looking at the plans where the adjoining fences are, I do see windows. I would advocate for high windows. I don't know if you call them transom windows or eyebrow windows, but the light comes in, but neither party is looking at each other. I think that would be, because I think we really have to try to think about the neighboring property owners maintaining some level of their privacy with the new structure, if we can. I'm a fan, as I mentioned earlier, of, if at all possible, if we can require, or certainly highly recommend, that they choose the architecture style that fits best within the neighborhood. And so those are things I would like to see to go along with the program. Do we have any motions anybody wants to make? Or
Can I get a clarification on that last
sir.
statement? Is that a requirement, or for staff to recommend?
My first choice would be, it would be a requirement. And if that's not allowable under the law or the program, then my second choice would be to highly encourage. And I'm really basing that on the dropped-in pre-manufactured ADU that I'm looking at on another street. And you drive by and you can see it sticking way up above the front fence line. The neighbors are looking at it, and it just doesn't fit architecturally with anything. Whereas these plans, I would agree that they would fit in with most of Walnut Creek. They'd be nice to look at.
I agree for the most part. I think one thing I'll say about these designs is that they are designed very carefully to be low profile. It's similar to what is already allowed within the setbacks for sheds. And the reason why those are allowed is because you don't see them too much. And what the architect had said, and this is absolutely true, is in order to get the placement that they propose with the 4-foot setback, they can't have any windows. And if you look at how they're set up that way. So it's, I mean, clearly, these are very well baked options from different jurisdictions. And the more I look at them, the more I think it's clever the way you actually, there's some advantages to doing it in this way. But if they were to try to flip it around, so say the windows were facing the side fence, by building code, they would have to move it away. There's nothing, I cannot imagine that the state law exempts them from the building code in any way. The state fire marshal just isn't buying into that.
That would be life safety, and I
That's
think
not,
they
yeah,
wouldn't
that's
touch it.
not, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, so like Plan D as an example, 3 sides have windows. So that means at least one or more windows will be against one fence.
Yeah. What about sprinklers? Just out of curiosity, are you requiring that these be sprinklered?
I believe we are if the primary residence is. Randy, do you recall what we came up with on that?
Yeah, state law basically says if the primary residence is sprinklered, then these have to be sprinklered. If the primary residence is not, then you do not have to.
Just, okay.
They do have to meet, I didn't mention it, but PV code, green code, so they're all going to have to accommodate some level of photovoltaic,
Right,
which can be accommodated on the existing house or on this.
right.
They all have, it looks like, three sides of windows. So I don't know if, and I'm not familiar with the life safety code you're talking about. Would that preclude, some of those, like, I call it like a transom window? There be something like that?
They have to by law, I believe, and I don't do so much residential anymore, but they're required to have a window size, like an exit window, I think,
An amount of openings.
and a percentage of opening as well for the.
But the
yeah.
size of the window per se is, I don't think for the ADUs there's a limitation. And what I think is, and there's no fire rating here either, because they're 4 feet away from the,
is there?
property line.
Is that right?
I think so. I think if they reach 3 feet, then you have to
Is that what-
deal
yeah.
with.
Okay.
Correct
Well,
me
sure
if I'm
Randy knows
wrong.
what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, I think, but in residences, or is that just above the second floor that you have to have exit windows? Do you have to have exit windows for this?
Yes, exit windows are required in any bedroom or any sleeping space.
For every bedroom, yes.
Okay,
And then, of course, there's, certain ventilation and light requirements in general for every room, and that is calculated. I didn't mean to imply that there were not windows there were only windows on two sides. If you'll note that the orientation of the project would be on the primary windows or on the probably two
Yeah.
sides of the building. And there may be an ancillary window, in some cases, a bathroom window or a small kitchen window, but you're not typically looking out of
Yeah.
the living room. And the primary living space is onto a neighbor's property.
I mean, you
Every house has a window
Yeah.
facing another. That is not uncommon.
you didn't imply it, I just misinterpreted it.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But I think, to your point, Charles, is that they have to have these windows, and they have to be, I think it's 10% of the floor area.
Okay.
They have to be within a certain distance of the ground, so somebody can actually get out the window.
Got
and
it.
Fire. So it's, I mean, it's a good idea, and I think some of these plans, like just looking at the first one, like the Plan A, I mean, they cleverly have all the kitchen wall and so forth against that, so it actually limits the amount of windows. So I think you're never going to get away from it, and actually, in terms of the occupants, you want to have windows.
And the only one is the two-bedroom unit. When that faces the side, the property line, you need a window that's at least 44 inches from the finished floor for the evacuation route,
Yeah.
for egress. So that window will be bigger, but then like you're saying, the bathroom windows, the kitchen windows, those can be high. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I could just modify my condition to be sensitive as much as possible to the adjoining neighbor's privacy. I mean, I respect the architect's comment that all houses have windows facing each other. That is very true. However, and this is the tricky part about the ADU law, when the state put this law in place, essentially what they did from a practical standpoint is, so people bought single-family homes in an area zoned single-family with certain density requirements. So there was a lot of distance between the windows, and essentially the state has said, hey, it's not single-family zoned anymore. It's some sort of multifamily zoning, and therefore everybody is at risk of all of a sudden having a neighbor's window much closer than was ever anticipated in the city's general plan or specific plan for the neighborhood development. So it's a game changer to, and we're seeing this with other developments in the city, it's a game changer to someone who bought a home, they've lived there 40 years and never dreamt in a million years that, you know, right behind their fence, there might be, in some cases, a 3-story tall house looking right down into their windows. So that's why I'm very sensitive, and we've heard the public in front of the commission saying, hey, wait a second, what's happening here? So,
That's the view of about half of the public.
yeah,
I have 2 kids, one of who just graduated from college and another one who's 2 years older, and it's a very real concern of mine that they're not going to be able to buy houses in the area.
yep.
So I can assure you that there's going to be about half the people who are going to want to do this because they're going to want to maintain the integrity of their families, and I think that has to trump it. And I think you have to come. I think the good thing about this is that if you make it really easy for people, you know. And by the way, the planning code has, in many cases, has allowed these things for years. They've allowed them for years. But the barrier has been the complexity of the planning process. So what it does is it streamlines it. And you know, probably it wouldn't be 4 feet. I mean, our planners over here could tell us what it is. But I think what you're doing is you're dropping barriers rather than having to go through a design review process, among other things. It's on us as an architect to go through those things. And clients don't want to pay for those services. And if you make things too complicated, we are never going to solve this problem. So I think the best thing that we can do is come up with, now this thing that landed from the moon, this ADU. I'm not guessing it's as sensitive as these are to the area that we live. And so if we give people the tool to use this, there many people are going to use this, as opposed to going out and doing some other alternative. And hopefully they can make these modular, because that would make it even simpler.
Thank you. Any motions?
I mean, I think of the motions that you said. I'm supportive of further research on landscape requirements and the protection of heritage trees. I think that would be a motion. That would be part of a motion. What do you think, Carlos?
I support that. I mean, trees are very important.
Are you willing to include in the motion some level of, you know, be sensitive to the privacy of the next door neighbor without it being specific?
I think we should, I think it's okay to ask staff to recommend that, right? Because I don't think they can do, I don't think staff can do anything more.
Right. Okay.
Right.
I think we cannot regulate that. I mean, it's already 4 feet from the setback, and that's, I mean, you and you, that's the distance between 2 windows.
So, but would you be comfortable, Commissioner Valia, with a recommend in the?
But I don't see how. I don't see how. I mean, like saying probably use opaque windows or non-operable. Well, I mean, if you have bedrooms there, they have to be operable. They have to allow air in, and it's, I don't see how.
But can you say, trying to make this work here, can you say, encourage orientations that are compatible with, it's probably not the right word, but compatible with the neighbors?
Sensitive.
Something like that. Just encourage.
Yeah.
So that it gives them something to say, well, we're supposed to encourage you to do this, and
Because you might be able to move the property 4 feet this way, the ADU, or the way, whichever, or in picking which walls face the neighbor's side. You might have the same ADU, but if it's like the square one, Plan D, if it's rotated a certain way, depending on where it is it in the corner? Is it in the middle fence? You know,
Yeah, that's,
little
but
tweaks
that's a
help.
case-by-case study.
Well, that,
And that's what staff is supposed to be doing as well.
Yeah, but I think, so I guess for me to get behind the program, because this program to me is it's a trade-off program. We're gonna trade you an easier, cheaper way if you choose these plans and listen to some of our recommendations. So this is our only chance to ask the person plopping in the ADU to be considerate as much as feasible with their neighbors when they place the ADU and how they orient it in their yard. And
I
think
would use,
that's-
I would use the word, I would support the word encourage.
Can I take a shot at a language
Yeah.
here? Okay, and these conditions are something that we would need to inquire within specifically the CAO office to see if we could even do these.
Right.
So I would see that condition would be, or that recommendation would be to encourage orientation of an ADU that is sensitive to adjacent residential properties.
You're good.
I like that.
Because there might be another ADU in the near future, so
Yeah, you could have two ADUs back to back, by the way, right next to each other.
that's you and you again.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got two bullet points you're considering so far. It's a landscape requirement.
It's a landscape / tree
Recommendation.
requirement.
What's the tree
The
requirement?
tree requirement is it possible to preserve highly protected trees
Okay,
by changing the placement?
got it.
To what Charles said about style, because I kind of with Carlos about, I'm being an architect, I want the ability to do whatever the heck I want. Of course, I'm going to design my own when I do mine. But I think the big concern is exterior lots, is like my house, I live in one of these isolated areas, islands of county within Walnut Creek. I live in Walnut Heights. And my lot, my side yard is actually fronts Mountain View Boulevard. So if you drive by, if I put an ADU in my yard, I could do something that's completely incompatible with the house. And to me, I understand why you would want to be compatible if it was an exterior lot, which I believe the example you're talking about is. If it was an interior lot, like the examples drawn here pretty much, well, they're not really not, but there's a lot on the lots that are corner lots. Actually, I have a double corner lot. Maybe you encourage, so I see the value in what you're saying for that reason. Because if some, you don't want to create this kind of mishmash look. I think a lot of neighborhoods in Walnut Creek are eclectic, but in some of the newer areas, I think there's value on those exterior lots to try to match it. But I think if it's in the backyard, if it's in a true backyard, locked in between 8 houses, who cares?
The neighbor like
Yeah, so
Charles.
my example is, and actually, I care about it a lot less than the people that live next to it now. But the reason I brought this up is because this example, it is an interior lot. It's tucked in the back left-hand corner, looking from the front of the house. But because the lots in the neighborhood are all probably quarter acre, third acre, and there's so much room between the house, so they literally did put it within the 4 foot of the fence. So when you walk or drive by the house, or if you live across the street and you're looking out one of your front windows, all of a sudden you see, and I love your description, you see the ADU that was dropped from the moon. Yeah. And you're depending if you care about that kind of stuff, you might be crying looking at it. Or you might go, that's really cool. But that's where, and I've seen also, right in the adjoining neighborhood, I've seen where someone did a sizable ADU, but it matches the architecture of their house. And it does face a street. They're on a corner lot, and it's on the street side of the lot. When I see them matching, it seemed so much less obtrusive to the look of the neighborhood. Again, just one person's opinion. Yeah.
But maybe it's the mass or the volume or the scale of the whole thing that bothers you. Probably not the architectural detail, not the style, but
It's
I'm
actually.
trying to defend my position.
Yeah, no, but it's actually, I've heard you say in prior projects, well, there's no architecture there. That's just a box. You would probably look at this
No, I have
ADU
to
and
see
go,
what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
there's
Yeah, just a
nothing
box.
there. You'd be
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good
But
point.
yeah, I don't, we have to, we're negotiating a motion here. So we have to, maybe I end up giving on that one because well, I'm not sure. Are we okay with the secretary's version of be sensitive to the adjoining neighbors? Because if we can agree to get that in the motion, then I'm willing to concede and support a motion without the make it look like the neighborhood part. Because I'm thinking what's more important to the average homeowner in Walnut Creek? Probably their privacy versus the architecture.
Well, that's not us. We care about the architecture.
Well, I know you do. I know
I
you.
mean,
And let me remind the Design Review Commission, we are really here to opine on the architecture shown in the
Right.
program.
Right.
well, I think, I don't think there's anything that has been voiced about the architecture. I think the architecture is good. Clearly, these are very well baked, and you're doing these throughout the state, and so they're well tuned. I think. I don't have any objection with that. I don't have any objection to a motion as such, as long as it's the word encourage and not require, because for one thing, these folks, they don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think my things are all encourage.
Yeah.
I guess, Mr. Secretary, in other projects, when we opine on architecture, we also opine on the placement of the building, the impact to the adjoining neighbor. We just did that on a recent project that we approved, and we made positive changes to the project by having it reorientated. So it seems, because this is a program that we're being asked to give a recommendation on, and I don't know that I could give a positive recommendation on a program if I can't make any comment about the impact to the adjoining properties.
Oh, I agree, and I believe everything we're talking about here is tied to architecture.
It's architecture, yeah.
And I agree with the other commissioners. I think we all like the architecture overall of the buildings, right?
But I think they're trying to depict something that comes very close to the styles that we find in Walnut Creek, and I think it's fine, yeah.
All right, does anybody want to take all of this and make a motion out of it?
Go ahead.
And the goal of our motion is it just to give a positive recommendation?
It's to provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission for their consideration of the entire program.
Okay, so then I will make a motion that we give a positive recommendation to the Planning Commission to consider the entire, what do we call it? Pre-planned or?
I would say that it would be a recommendation to consider the proposed ADU plans for inclusion in the permit-ready ADU program, and any additional comments that the commission would like to recommend be included in the administrative structure of the program. So that would allow you to offer the request, the suggestions to encourage orientation, to be sensitive to the neighbors, and to require / encourage landscape requirements, tree replacement, preservation, that sort of thing. But yeah, first and foremost, it is a recommendation on the proposed ADU plans for inclusion in the program, and then any additional
Okay,
recommendations from the commission on the administrative structure of the program.
all right, I'll use wording from the agenda then, which is to to provide a motion to provide a positive recommendation on the pre-approved accessory dwelling unit plans, including floor plans and exterior elevations, to be used in the city's pre-approved accessory dwelling unit program with the following conditions. To encourage sensitivity to the adjoining neighbors, to encourage choosing an architecture that is harmonious with the neighborhood. And I'm going to go a little stronger on the tree and the landscape to, I guess we can't. So to encourage an update to the program that would provide for highly protected trees to be protected if at all possible, by still allowing the ADU to be in place, and to require appropriate landscaping. Or I don't know what words the city uses, but to consider appropriate landscaping. Do you guys want to modify what I'm saying to make it better?
I'm supportive of it.
Yes, I would support it. I think it's not, again, style is just a thing. I mean, it's more that there's a guarantee here that proportions, sizes, heights, everything is taken care of by the styles that the architect presented today to us. So,
Yep.
so I don't want to go the style way because I still feel.
Right. So we're encouraging it, and I only want to do it in the motion if it's something you truly can support. I'm viewing this as encouraging selecting one of the three styles that is the most harmonious or the most fitting with the neighborhood.
That's fine.
But in the end, you get to pick whatever you want, right? Because we're only encouraging.
Yeah.
But if
Neighborhood or the house?
The language was neighborhood.
Yeah, but I wonder whether you make it the house. I mean,
that's a fair upgrade. That's a fair
yeah.
upgrade.
Yeah, because otherwise they're out going around taking pictures of
Okay.
other houses like we have had to do elsewhere myself. And we can't make them do that here.
So then we'll modify it to encourage to as closely match the primary residence.
Yes,
Okay.
fine.
And then I guess that still allows for eclectivity, if you will, because two houses next
It
to each other.
encourages,
Yeah.
yes, it encourages.
It's just an encourage. Okay. So
Is there a second?
I second that.
do you have the motion written down in a manner that works for you, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. All right. Can we take a roll call vote then?
Chair Crowling,
Yes.
Commissioner Vlia,
Yes,
Commissioner Newsom.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your
thank you.
all your work and your presentation and everything. We really appreciate it. All right, moving on to commission member and staff reports or announcements. Do any commissioners have any announcements or reports? How about staff?
I have none.
Then we will move to adjournment.
Great, good.
Whew.